Good afternoon, everybody. DMGeezerjim here, back to continue our series. DMGeezerjim presents Dungeon Mastering, information for new dungeon masters or maybe even veterans. Stuff that I've learned, applied, picked up, and practiced since back in yon day of 1983 with my purple box, as you can kind of see it on the shelf behind me, up till 5th edition, which I'm currently DMing. This is definitely the DM chats are we're going to be focused on 5th edition in regards to the series, but I definitely want to make sure that we are understanding the themes, the concepts, the ideas should apply to any RPG. Granted, we are being dungeon mastered and D&D specific. So up till now, I've been talking a lot about setup, where to find stuff, what you need to know, what your players need to know, and we spent a couple, probably 3 episodes, really focused on the people involved, the players, the dungeon master, how everyone is a player at the table, how everyone has an equal say, and that you need to, in my opinion, your focus should be on building a relationship, rapport, and communication with your players during a session zero, discussing and setting expectations that everyone can move forward from there, making sure everyone's on the same page with rules, all of the session zero stuff. I'm a firm believer in when the session zero work is done and the communication work is done, everything else comes better. When everyone comes from a good point, when everyone feels like they have a voice at the table and they're collaborating together on a shared experience, then everything else kind of gets easier for the dungeon master. When we make mistakes, it's okay. The group's laughing about them. If you need the space to move things forward, you have that. Your group will actually become more of an asset in propelling the adventures forward, provided they have that communication, that rapport, and that camaraderie that we that we build the foundation for in session zero. Okay, session zero is done. We're ready to start playing. So what's next? Preparation, understanding what you need to look at as a dungeon master, and this is so much stuff that goes into this. So this is just going to be our first, I want to say kind of a summary, a syllabus, as you will. So what I'm going to be using, so we can do kind of a working example of what to look at, setting up a short, setting the adventure to run it tomorrow, and what we need to do to prepare for tomorrow. Those are two different things. We're going to use Lost Mines of Phandelver. This is a freely available basic. This is kind of one of the main popular entry points for for a lot of the 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons players. Freely available, so I'm going to use this because there's no limit on getting access to this module. This will be a good example for us to work forward to, a good common ground. I don't want to go dig into some sort of obscure, 2nd edition module, and I certainly don't want to, go into a high level thing because this is new dungeon mastering, new to the game. Cool. 5th edition D&D Beyond. I'm a big fan of it, even though I used to be a Luddite. Everything was pen, paper, notebooks, note cards, graph paper. I've fully embraced the digital environment, the convenience of search, the ease of use, whether it's 5th D&D Beyond, whether I'm using PDFs, digital map makers. That's where I'm at right now. You will find your pace. A lot of people I hear asking, and this is a prep question, what do I use for making maps? Are you playing live or are you playing virtually? If you're playing live, you have a few options. Number one, you don't even need a map. You need some open space, a ruler, and a pile of change. Quarters are players, nickels are bad guys, dimes are this, and the ruler 1 inch equals 5 feet of movement. That's all you need for tabletop mapping. In regards for preparing for that, when you're looking at the product, this is let me do a kind of a one-for-one translation here. We're gonna go to sources. Come on, help me out here. Oh, it's the first one here, but it's not the first one on the quick list. You hear me talking maps, mapping, all that kind of stuff. And ironically, we'll get into it. Let me just get down to a quick map here. This is all I'm referring to when I say a battle map, okay? 5-foot grid, 1 square equals 5 foot. Make sure 100. This is a day 1 to day 1001 rule. Pay attention to your square. To your scale. 1 square equals 5 feet. Some maps it's 1 square equals 10 feet. Some maps it's 1 square equals 10 yards. It depends on the size of the map, the scale, if indoor, outdoor, etc. But that's definitely an important thing to pay attention to if you're adapting and drawing a map for your own, or if you're trying to print one out, okay? If you were to print this out and take it to Office Depot, Staples, whatever, and print it out, you definitely want to make sure that you're at 1 inch per square for your minis. So if this was 1 square equals 10 feet, you actually need twice as much surface space. If you're drawing it virtually, if you're drawing on a tabletop, scale is hugely important. It's one of those things that you really don't notice it if you're not told to look for it. So always, 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 whenever you open a map, start looking at it, look for your scale. The second thing is going to be your key, okay? This is just simply giving you, what is this a map, what is this picture of? This is a bridge, this is an escarpment, rapids in the water, stalagmites, steps, stones, all etc., etc. Mike Schley artwork here, courtesy, published in the book. So this is actually a pretty fun map for a day one adventure, Real quick, just to show you, if you have D&D Beyond, you can save image as, you can save it into a file as a PNG. As long as it's for non-commercial, it's personal use only, you could actually export that map directly into a virtual tabletop that you wanted, or you could put on a jump drive, take it up to your printer of choice and have them print it out, making sure that they understand the sizing of it. And now therein lies your challenge. So you don't need any of that for this map. You can just simply describe it. Theater of the mind is handled in a completely different way. You know what the map is. You've just got to constantly reinforce what the players are seeing as they move through the room. For example, room number 3. You guys approach a short stairway, maybe 4 steps that extends about 5 feet up. The gap in this cave is about 10 feet wide. At the top of the stairs, the room opens up to your left and your right in kind of an oval shape, descending further to the southeast. The room is about 15, maybe 20 feet across at its widest, descending about 25 feet to the southeast away from you. Near the far eastern part of the room, there seems to be a large collapse of rubble, and a tiny little opening can be seen up the rise of rubble, leading to a darkened area behind it. And I've described the room. Now, when you're in Theater of the Mind mode, this may very well be a square for your party, or a rectangle, and that's okay. That's okay. Just you got to manage it verbally, making mental notes for yourself where each enemy is and where the party is in relation to that. Theater of Mind is a little bit more challenging, but that's how it used to be done. So, you're mapping, creating your own maps. You need graph paper. You need a piece of paper. Just make sure that you're able to track your scale for movement. Okay. Understanding a map is number 1. Understanding its scale, understanding the keys, and understanding how those relate to the environment. A stalagmite is going to be large enough to possibly provide cover. So if you're I'm going to zoom in a wee bit, and this is kind of in relation to when we did our battle map, our battle simulation. I think that was episode 5. You pay attention to where your cover is, and use that to move. That can provide a place to sneak up to. That can provide a -2 when the enemy's firing at them. There's certain things like that. Over here, you just simply see beds. This is where the goblins are sleeping. So yeah, understanding the symbology, understanding the scale of the map, the first thing, and then seeing where it's keyed in. So I'm gonna leave this. I'm gonna go Levsies Rightseas this time. Open up a new tab, Dungeons and Dragons. We're gonna put Rightseas. Rightseas, thank you. Yeah, I'm just gonna open up my Lost Mines here as well. Collection. I hate half screen. We're just gonna cheat. I'm gonna go here, sources, all Lost Mines, has these. Good to go. Okay. Map on left, key on right. Let's look at the Cragmaw Hideout. So we're gonna break this down so you can understand how to read a map and how to prepare the information provided in the key alongside the map. As a dungeon master, I got a map and I got a bunch of dudes. What do I do with it? Let's talk about it. So the first thing, thankfully, as a beginner set, you get what's called descriptive box text. In some things, it's shaded gray, and some it's a defined section of text that you read to your players to describe what they see, even if the map's out or not. So when they first pull up after walking through the woods, following the Goblin's trail, you come across a large cave and a hillside, 5 miles from the scene of the ambush. So the party's been traveling 5 miles. A shallow stream flows out of the cave mouth, which is screened by dense briar thickets. A narrow, dry path leads into the cave on the right-handed side of the stream. So we're describing what they're seeing right here as they hit spot 1. So this is where prepping and understanding comes in, guys. Section 2 is right here. And as a beginner module, it helps you. When their characters cross to the east side of the stream, they can see around the screening thicket to area 2. This is a goblin guard post, though the goblins here are bored and inattentive. So that's telling you as a dungeon master the goblins aren't paying attention, so your group will probably be able to see the goblins before the goblins hear the group. Now, from a gameplay standpoint, if your party's sitting out there arguing, smacking rocks against their shields, doing anything loud, you need to adjust that expectation because they're only 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 feet away from the goblins. Understanding the environment. There's going to be sound that carries as the party moves through. They can trigger an encounter right here, okay? So when you get to the next thing, and it says, so on the east side of the stream flowing from the cave mouth, a small area in the briar thicket has been hollowed out to form a lookout post or blind. Wooden planks flatten out the briars and provide room for the guards to lie hidden and watch the area, including a pair of goblins lurking there right now. So if the goblins notice the intruders in area 1, which are told there's a chance that they can notice, they fire their bows, shooting through the thickets and catching the characters by surprise. They're firing across the water. If they don't notice the adventurers, they spot them when they splash across the stream, and neither side is surprised. Okay, this is where reading in advance versus reading as you go is an important thing. I'm always gonna you're gonna get sick of hearing me say this. When you're a dungeon master and you're running modules, preparing modules, building modules, RTFM. Read the flippin' manual. Make sure you understand where it's supposed to start, what's available in the middle, and how it's supposed to end. It's not a memorization game. You just need to know what the intent is so you can either prepare for your party to meet that intent or adjust the intent to match what your party's doing. So reading a module, understanding the progress, isn't necessarily locking your players into a railroaded sort of a path. It's making sure that you, me, and every other dungeon master has the tools to present the information to what the party is seeing, make sure they have a good, accurate picture of what's around them, and provide them with opportunities to interact with the environment. Whether the environment is trees, rocks, or enemies, that's all considered environmental. Okay? Make sure you understand these things, where they're at. You've seen it in your brain. You've read it once or twice. So you're more prepared to provide it for your group. You see goblins. How many? Hold on. Let me look in the book. 2. Okay. Or if you're if you're improving, you're improving. You can say whatever number you want, but adjust for balance accordingly. Anyway, so let's rewind one section here. We're going to get a little bit deeper into the cave, but I want to show you a difference, and this is where preparation is a thing. We're looking at the Cragmaw Hideout, the goblin cave. The module starts actually at a goblin ambush, okay? You read the text, to read the following box text to start the encounter. You know, if you're using Meet Me in Phandelver Adventure Hook, the characters who approach to make the investigation, identify the horse, so on and so forth. So we're looking at maps and combat today. During this session, we've talked about understanding the hooks and how to get the party into it in other episodes. So your party's here; they're doing what they need to do. The first encounter of the day, you're not provided a map for. As the dungeon master, you don't get a map, even though it's a combat encounter. It's a set ambush. So either A, you want to go theater of the mind, or B, you want to use your mapping assets to produce something for your party. There's 4 goblins hiding in the woods, 2 on each side of the road. They wait until someone approaches the bodies and they attack. So the plus side is that's why we're using Lost Mines, is that it provides new players and new dungeon masters plenty of information to handle the combat. Um, if we've read as in advance, you understand what the goblin is because you knew you had to go look in Appendix B for the goblin stat. Using D&D Beyond, you just mouse over and click the hyperlink, you're good to go. Know their stealth skills +6. So you're going to set a d20 roll for the goblins to be stealth before the party gets there. You know what their stealth was. So if you rolled a 14, the goblins rolled a 20 on their stealth. The party needs to beat a 20 to notice the goblins, or the party is surprised. Okay? Using this prize rule, you're going to get a free round of attacks before they get to do anything. Before initiative, you're going to go into initiative. Your party's stuck on their initiative. They can't do anything while a goblin goes through their initiative. And then the start of the next round proceeds as normal. Plenty of information given to you as a new dungeon master. Use the initiative rules, which we talked about when we were looking at the basic rules, just reinforcing what you should know to help you practice it, to help us practice it as new aspiring dungeon masters. And this tells you the goblins will fight until 3 of them are defeated, and then the last one will flee, heading towards the goblin trail. In the unlikely event the goblins defeat the adventurers, they leave them unconscious, loot them in the wagon, then head back to the hideout. So there you are given information. If the party loses, they're not killed. This is, you guys got robbed. Go away. There's information for capture and all that. But the prep-wise, no map. They're not even telling you how far apart the goblins are other than they're on each side of the road. You don't have a description of how large this area is. As a dungeon master, this could probably be your first virtual map that you try to make. You want to give the goblins the advantage of the first shot, but you don't want to give the goblins the advantage of too much space. This is where understanding mechanics of the game come in a little bit. Remember, a character can only move so much in one round. If you're setting your goblins at maximum range for longbows of 80 feet, your party can move 30, a character can move 30 feet, shoot at the goblin, or they can move 30 feet and dash and continue to get to 60 feet, which is going to leave them one move short. Your party has a tactical decision: close the distance and fight, come in slow using dodge, come in slow shooting. But if you make that gap too large, your goblins get a couple free rounds of shots at your players. Make that gap too small, the party can get there in one move and beat down a goblin in one move. So because you're not given the information as part of the goblin ambush in regards to its, in regards to its size or scale, you have to decide this as your first combat encounter. Okay? So, I would recommend road straight down the middle, goblins 40 foot off to either side. If someone wants to use their dash, they can close action, get right up on the goblin, force the goblin to have a disadvantage on their next attack. If they're using bow range, or they switch to melee and they're engaged. Anything more than 40 feet starts giving the goblins the chance to do too much damage before your party engages. Anything less than 30 feet mitigates the encounter. So 40 feet, 2 goblins on either side of the road. I would honestly gap them about 15 feet apart, the 2 goblins, okay? That forces your players to make a choice, gives you the opportunity to flank, gives you disengage, move, that kind of a thing. Fighting the got now. Let's rewind a second. My brain went a little bit fast there. I'm going to be running a new series pretty soon. It's going to be called Monster Foo, How to Make Your Monsters Fight Smarter. You don't want to do that in this counter. This is level 1, probably the first combat for everybody. Just fight basic, plain, shoot, move up to you, hit you until you hit me and I die and go. Give your party the benefit of the doubt. Remember, a lot of dungeon masters, you might be say, I never fudge rolls, I never do this, I never do that. And if you want to be that way, that's fine. Day 1, first time I've ever sat down to play D&D, we sat down, we spent an hour rolling up my character, and I'm playing a hypothetical here. And I get in, and we were talking about, and we get this cool job, and we go down the road, and there was 3 turns, and my character was dead, because the goblins use this same thing called nimble and goblin tactics, and they're able to stab me and then disengage as a bonus action and run away and shoot me, and the DM ran the goblin. Yeah, player's not going to enjoy that. You may have taught them how to play, you may have taught them how to be cautious, but as your first encounter ever, that's not a fun, that's not a fun thing to do. This is designed for the goblins to lose, and you need to make sure that you set it up in a threatening manner to where the goblins lose, but it's a challenge because the goblins already ambushed something here. Obviously, they were successful enough to kill a few things. So, moving from there back to the next section where we're looking at the map. And again, I'm not sure if I'm going to go like room for room, piece for piece on these encounters. I will for this one, just because, new DM information. Oops, sorry, kitty. You're right on my mouse. Let me move my stuff so you got a little more space. Little snooty boy. Okay, so section 2 that we looked at a second ago is where the goblins will begin firing. This is exactly contrary, a perfect description of what I was talking about. In the goblin ambush, you have no idea who's firing at what range or where. Right here, the two goblins can be firing at 10, 25, no more than 35 feet between the goblins and the players. Okay, so information is given. You're good to go. They can be stealth. They can be surprised. Up to you. The party walks into this hallway. If they can splash through the water if you want. That's up to you to handle. Make it difficult terrain, difficult, mossy, rocky, rushing water. You're going to be going a little bit slower, or there's a chance for you to slip. Up to you. Handle that if you need to. Nothing given in the book for that. That's kind of a dungeon master option. It's not an optional rule. It's a reality. We get to use the environment as we need to, but you're given some, you're not necessarily given the information to do that right now. But room 3 is our next room. The Cragmaws keep a kennel of foul-tempered wolves that they're training for battle. You don't read that part. You read the yellow part. Just inside the cave mouth, a few uneven stone steps lead up a small, dank chamber on the east side of the passage. The cave narrows to a steep fissure at the far end and is filled with the stench of animals. Savage snarls and the sound of rattling chains greet your ear when 3 wolves are chained up just inside of the opening. Each wolf's chain leads to an iron rod driven into the base of a stalagmite. So you've described this right here. All of the wolves are chained to this stalagmite. Now, what makes this difficult, let me do another zoom on this one here. Hopefully it doesn't mess everything up. That's okay. We'll get it fixed if it does. Oh, come back. Bah. Bring her back up. Don't want to slide with me. I'm going to zoom in for a second here so we can get a good look at it. Okay. So this is one of these prep things that you maybe not be aware of if it's all included in reading a map, understanding part of the preparation process. So if these wolves are chained to this stalagmite, either the chain is 1 foot long, and remember, a creature can't occupy a square another creature has, so they have to be 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, whatever. So they have to have at least a 5-foot lead on their chain, which means they can hit the party when the party walks up those stairs. Okay? Based on how it's written. Let me pop back. Oh, come back. No. Having some tech issues today, sorry. Let's zoom. Smoosh, smoosh. Okay. So, as we read it, this is sometimes where what you read and what you see can be 2 different things. The party can calm the animals if they want. There's an animal handling check given there. If the party feeds them first, they make them friendlier. There's a climb at the back that leads to room 8. It's described here. Everything narrow opening in the east wall. That the shaft that was described leads to a natural trim lead. That's a 30-foot climb up to area 8. Bunch of nasty stuff at the bottom of the shaft. If they succeed, they move half speed, which is climbing. So in this situation, the game is saying you need to make an athletics check to grab it. If you succeed on your athletics check, you can then begin climbing using your climb speed. Okay? So that's kind of a good standard, tried and true. If they want to change something in the middle of their climb, that's where you use an athletics or an acrobatics, usually an athletics because it's strength-based. If they fail, they can't gain or lose ground. If they fail, they fall down, so on and so forth. So you can give them a couple checks at different points if you want, or you can just give them the climb. Totally up to you. If the wolves are goaded by enemies beyond their reach or driven in a frenzy, allows them to yank the iron rod secure. So what this is saying, the development is if the party's standing down here on the stairs, yipping and picking at the wolves can break the chains and attack the party in this small area. Remember, wolves are, they have pack tactics. They're going to fight close to each other to give each other advantage. So you don't want to do that early in your game, because that's one of those for later things. Let them kind of try to engage different targets, try to maybe filter them out. Plus side is only 2 wolves could attack at the first time without using disengage to move back and forth. Okay. Steep passage goes up. This is where the game book tells you, DM, remember, the lighting can be an issue from this point. Without dark vision, the ambient lighting of the cave is no longer providing enough illumination. Party needs to bust out torches, lanterns, or have dark vision. Remember, in a dungeon, in a cave, light works both ways. Light provides the players with illuminations they can see around them. Provides anything a distance off the ability to detect the group as they can see the glow of the light farther than the pair. You know, that's all one of those things. I got a torch. I can see to 60. If I'm going down a straight hall, something 150 feet away can see the glow of my light. Even though they can't see me, they can see the light. So there's always going to be an awareness. Your enemies, your defenders will typically have at least a perception advantage if you want to use rolls or an awareness that the party's coming if they have to use light sources. Cool? So 4 is talking about a steep passage that goes up to the left where they climb into a shadowy crevasse, a couple checks to get up, and that's going to climb them to a side room to 6. The overpass, the stream continues up and beyond another set of uneven steps. A waterfall sounds further away. If they didn't spot the bridge from 4, there's a chance they'll see it here. There's a goblin standing watch on that bridge. This is another example of you need to make sure that you've read the entire thing. Because if you didn't read 5 until now, you're like, oh, there was a goblin standing on the bridge that would have seen my people at 4 the whole time. Remember, encounters aren't necessarily always keyed or listed in the context that they include each other. You can very much have a chain reaction of events if a goblin's able to retreat from the ambush. The party doesn't catch them, follow their trail. Everything in this cave system is going to be on a certain level of alertness. Maybe the wolves have been let off their chains and they're going to jump the party and be able to pursue them through there. Maybe there's 2 goblins. The moment the party gets here and lights their torch, the goblin sees it and he's able to fire because the party didn't see that. That's what, and like I said, we're not going to go inch by inch, step by step through this, but I think it's a perfect example of learning how to read the map alongside the key for your dungeon. Okay, the dungeon key is telling you who, what, when, where. Very, very rarely is it a linear first 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 5, and none of the locations affect each other. It's very easy for things to domino, tumble, and spiral out of control. Or it's very easy for the party to circumvent and sneak through and give the wolves some chom-choms, nom-noms, happy wolves, and give them some pets and succeed on animal handling and climb up and actually come up in room 8 as the 3rd stop of their room. They came in. They went in. Encounter 1 was the goblins here. Encounter 2 was the wolves. Encounter 3 could be the boss if they succeed. So you've got to know what to expect at this point. And remember, if the wolves are yowling and howling and they're crying out in pain, sound echoes through a cave. Granted, the players have a slight advantage because there's a stream running through here that provides some ambient noise to kind of balance it against themselves. Having the river running through here, you're giving your characters the opportunity to make a little bit of noise without alerting the whole cave. That's not open license to use thunderclap and have every single creature in this cave come running to the source of sound. Cool. So we know on room 5, the overpass, the goblin can potentially see this. Room 6 over here that connects either through the overpass here or through the climb here leads to the goblin lair. Okay. Large pools in area 7 of collapsible walls that can be yanked out to place a release of water. That's fun if you want to get a little trickier later. But we'll get to 7 here in a second. Room 6 is the goblin lair. This is where they're sleeping. You have your quick little Cragmaw den. See, they have the flood listed as part of encounter 5, which means that maybe the goblin cries out, shouts an alarm, and the goblins at 7 are able to remove the rocks, causing the flood to roll in. The passage is suddenly filled with a mighty roar as a huge surge of rushing water pours down from above. Okay, this is a consequence of making too much noise or being spotted, or having the enemy running away from encounter, the ambush or encounter 2, and raising the general alarm. Party, as soon as the goblin sees them come in the cave, he shouts, "Now!" One goblin lets the wolves go here. The other goblin busts the rocks open there, and your party's now not drowning, but they're slushing around. Environmental use, understanding the setup of the cave before you put it into action. Yet another example of why that's so important. And that's all I'm going to emphasize this. We're not going to spend a whole, we'll probably end this video here in a little bit once we finish these last couple caves. But yeah, how to index your map versus your map key. Okay, so Goblin Den 6. Out of character real quick, I'm kind of jumping between describing the where my brain is going between them. When you first sit down to read this, because this is a how-to thing, you're going to look at the map, you're going to look at the key, you're going to read it, and you're going to use it in context of each other. My brain's going into the next step as I read it. What happens when this happens? What happens when that happens? That's a natural thing that just comes with practice. There is a lot of that given here. That's why it's super important to read it. What happens if there's a general alarm sounded at 2? Well, first and foremost, the wolves could be let go at 3. Then the goblin at 5 is firing, warning the people at 7 to open up the tunnel. This whole thing is flooded. The groups in room the group in room 8 and 6 have been alerted, so you now have a lot more active participants. In order to enact that, you need to know what's going on in rooms 3 through 8. Cool? Goblin 6, you have your descriptive text. It talks about 6 goblins in here, and one of them is leader with a little bit more hit points. 5 of them are tending a cooking fire. Sildar, a human warrior that's been held prisoner, is sitting in here. Ymik, the goblin, is second in command of the whole hideout. There is the chance that your players are given the opportunity, based on what's here, to have a dialogue with the goblins. Your party can go shank the guy as they're told. The goblin wants Clark to get off so he can become the new boss. It says, if you kill Clark, I'll release Sildar when you bring the head back. Sildar tells him not to trust him, and honestly, if the party takes the deal to come back, even then he's going to try to force them a ransom or even attack. If they don't parlay, Ymik shoves Sildar over the edge and continues the fight. And Sildar could end up killing him. If they could stabilize him before he dies, damage and healing, that's up to you if you want to handle that. If you set the precedence for a non-player character being allowed to do death saves, you're now putting yourself into where you're rolling death saves for every creature in combat. They can end up stable at the end of it. You can do it. It's not explicitly stated one way or another, but if you look at damage and healing and basic rules, it describes it. Get information on role-playing Sildar right here. If they're able to rescue Sildar, he's able to tell them. You're not going to use this right at that moment in combat, though. Okay, so this is kind of one of those pieces of information that's important, but it's kind of out of context. Important to know it, read it, maybe put some notes off of it so you can continue moving through. But yeah, your party wants to rescue him and heal him, but he doesn't want to fight. So the main thing about 6 is securing Sildar, how he reacts, and the information he provides. Twinpool Caves is room 7. There's 3 goblins guarding this cave. If they are alerted by the goblin at 5, they will let the water go and prepare for combat. They may fire down the tunnels, having the advantage of holding actions. Remember, DM can do that as well. A lot of times in my mind, once a layer goes on action, once a layer has been alerted, every creature in that layer is moving and taking an action. So I can justify having an ambush because they know the party's coming. Soon as someone pops around that corner, Clark, shoot him with your bow. Dude sit there holding an action the whole time. So that's something that you need to prepare as a dungeon master with the flow, ebb and flow of the game. You are allowed to have your enemies sitting there ready to fire on someone that comes around the corner. Even out of initiative, held actions, so on and so forth, okay? So noise of the waterfall means the creature's innate can't hear the fighting. Creature's innate can't hear the fighting is 7. Right here in this corner is a big, heavy waterfall. Okay, so they're simply here to let water down and defend the room. Room 8 is our boss room. Clarg the Bugbear with a wolf and 2 goblins. Okay? Information is given for your party to be able to negotiate. Unless there's already been an attack, then they're going to be ready to fight. They're going to hide behind the stalagmites and jump on the party while you're hoping to ambush the characters when they enter. So the stalagmites will show up on, the bugbear and the wolves will hide here. The goblins will hide amongst the stuff over here when the party comes in. Charge! Some information here, the loot here, and all that. Okay. 8 short little encounters. On their own, none of them is a big deal, okay? This is where we level up as dungeon masters. If you read this as a 1-for-1, each room on its own is separate. It oversimplifies the dungeon. It allows for the movement through it, but it's not a natural progression. As much as Lost Mines was designed to teach players how to play, it's designed to teach you as how to dungeon master. And for the most part, it does a good job about it. Okay, this is an example where it does a pretty good job. As long as you, beating a dead horse, but as long as you're being thorough about reading the encounter key and looking at the map prior to play, you're going to be more prepared to react and adjust to your players' decisions and actions once they get there. And that philosophy will hold true for every dungeon every module adventure in the world. If there's a map and there's a key, make sure you read it and understand how each of the rooms can interact with ones before it or after it, or even across a river from it. Excuse me. As you get a little bit more practice in, you're going to be able to, have mass combats, have more stage defenses. But yes, this is a really good start point for you as a new dungeon master. Pull up Lost Mines, look at the map, read your key. And as you're reading your key, ask yourself, what if my party does X here? What if they're approaching at night instead of the daytime? How does that change anything? For the goblins, it doesn't. They all have dark vision. That's okay. For the party, it's going to limit their visibility. You may put the goblins in a sleep cycle at that point and have 1 or 2 less active guards. That's up to you. This is where Dungeon Master prep thing. Okay, this is a prep thing. Excuse me. Apologies. We're preparing our minds and we're preparing the tactics here. We're preparing the strategies here. We're looking at this map and understanding where the choke points are on this map and what are the assets that are available. Your higher level modules are not going to go into as much detail telling you developments, and they're not necessarily going to give you do this and do that. The plus side for your beginner is it helps you learn the tactics. The downside is it limits the behavior of the creature. But the plus side of that is it helps you protect your low-level players. So just kind of go with it to begin with. But always think natural progressions. What if my party's sloshing through the stream the entire time and they make their checks and they do all of that? How does that change it? Puts them in difficult terrain, might change the angle of approach, and might change the point at which the enemy sees them. But that's really kind of it. When you zoom in, let me go to full size here. Sorry. I'm not going to go back into the key. We know what's here now. So yeah, I'm going to spend about the last 5 minutes kind of talking what ifs as examples, putting it all together. Okay, we got our map. Real quick, we know there's 2 goblins here at 2. There are 3 wolves bound to the pillar here at 3. There's 1 goblin on the bridge over here at 5 who is a lookout. There are 3 goblins at 7, providing a lookout, and they can remove the rocks. At 8, there's 2 goblins, 1 bugbear, and 1 wolf. And at 6, there are 6 goblins and a hostage. That's the entire contents of the dungeon. Okay? So from there, how does all this interact? Goblins will retreat till they cannot, and then they'll negotiate unless they think they're strong, then they'll fight. Okay. You don't have to use both these goblins to fight. You can use both of them. Excuse me. You can use them both to run right off the bat. They've seen the party. They see the party's big and bad. What if the party's detected here? Then, if your party's detected here, then you have the option of the goblins at 2 shooting. Or you have the option of the goblins at 2 retreating into the cave, sounding a general alarm. That's playing mean for beginners, but that's your option. So if the goblins shoot, then the party engages. If the goblins are out here or killed, then hypothetically the goblins inside the lair have no warning. So, Dungeon Master tip, if you want to make it a little easier for your party, don't let the goblins at 2 retreat or escape. Make sure the party gets them in a position to kill them and move forward. If you want it to be a little bit more challenging, have one or both of the goblins immediately bolt into the cave, shooting and fighting, free action shouting, enemies here, move 30 feet, action shoot, end of turn. Bonus action actually for a goblin would be dash and keep on going. You can use your action economy and your tactics to make this lair as easy or as hard as we wanted. What did I say? 2, 3, 5, 6, 12, 14 goblins, 1 bugbear, and 4 wolves. 15, 19 potential combatants in here. If you were to play it incorrectly, your party could potentially face all 19. Or if they played incorrectly and you played logically. This is where you got to kind of back off a little bit and allow for space for the players to experiment. No, I'm not saying you can't run hardcore balls to the wall. We're playing for real, but be aware that that could bring potentially 19 enemies down on them. Cool? Okay. So the wolves at 3. If the goblins escape at 2, then they can release the wolves at 3 as an action. And as your party catches up, they're now dealing with the wolves in the watery tunnel. The noise from that will likely alert the guard at 5, who will make the guys at 7 open up the dam and let all of the water out, flooding the tunnel, making it difficult. At this point in time, one of the 3 and 7 is going to retreat into 8 and let the boss know what's going on. As written, the boss will probably stay here, but there's no way the party's going to surprise him. Likewise, the guard at 5 may have run into 6 and shouted at them, in which point they kill Silgar. If you can't get there quickly enough, as in that round, to stabilize him, he's toast, right? So your party's going to cruise in and deal with 6 goblins coming from 2. Worst case scenario. That's why I'm saying play slow and patient with the new party. Okay. If they deal with 2, if they feed the dogs at 3, they've moved up to 4 or 5 without any issue. This is where you need to be paying attention to mechanics like sound and light that was reinforced in the book. By the point of the river at 4, it's too dark to see. Party has to light something. Cast a light cantrip. The area flashes into brilliance. 15 feet of bright, an additional 15 feet of dim. It could even be bigger. But that's 15 feet, which is, let me zoom in, 5, 10, 15. Instantaneously, it's going to show this, and another 15 up. Anyone in this cave here is going to see that light. Anyone in this branch is going to see the light. So the moment the party, and here, even though it's a deep kind of a rocky descent, they'll still see the glow of the player's light source. So that's what's important about knowing point 4. We're using environment. Unless everyone has dark vision, the moment your players light a torch, cast a light cantrip, turn on their lantern, they've alerted the forces that are here. You have to adjust how combat goes at that point. Little bitty things like that make the biggest difference in DMing. That's why I'm emphasizing on in this. Oops, sorry. That's why I'm kind of emphasizing here the need to make sure that you understand what's available to you before you even run it. This is the prep thing. Understand how the map is laid out. Understand what's available in each location, and then play what if until you have a selection of outcomes to address players' actions. That's what a map and a map key's for. Not to necessarily tell you must do this with this. To tell you this is what it looks like, this is what can happen here, and this is what lives here. This is a suggestion, but outside of that, you're free to do what you want and use common sense, okay? Now, there is the caveat. We'll get to that in some of the rest of this. We're going to do a full breakdown on Lost Mines as far as a prep thing goes. This time, like I said, before we go too far into it, let's just talk maps, okay? How to get our maps, how to understand the maps, and understand the map keys, and that's where we're at here, okay? So, hugely, hugely, hugely important thing, whether you're drawing your own maps and drawing your own worlds and making up your own dungeons, or you using pre-made books and modules. Make sure you understand the geographic area represented by the map, even if it's the map in your head. Make sure you understand it and it's consistent in your brain. Make sure that you're able to describe the scene to your players. Pre-made modules have a lot of box text that helps set the scene for you. If it's a homebrew, if it's something that's in your head, that's cool too. Make sure that you can make... The goal is that your players can visualize what you're visualizing, okay? So you need to be able to describe it well enough for them to do that if you're playing Theater of the Mind and homebrew, okay? Next thing is understanding what lives there and how it all interacts with itself, with each other and itself. Some dungeons, they're in a state of war. This particular small, low-level stuff, not so much. Single group lives here. They live in support of each other. Aside from a couple dialogue options, they will interact in defense of each other. So understanding where those guys are, what they can see, what they can hear, where your party is, what kind of noise they're making, what kind of light they're producing, that's what triggers the cascade of events that can take a room by room dungeon crawl and turn it into a harrowing adventure. But only if you know how to use the map in conjunction with what's there to provide a good conclusion and reaction and consequence for player behavior. Cool? But yeah, hey, I'm gonna go ahead and end this episode here. The DMGeezerjim, we're getting deeper into prep now. Session 0 is behind us. It's time to play. What do you have to do as a dungeon master? One of the first and most important things you need to understand is how do your maps work and how do the keys work and how you need to use that. A lot of your adventure time is going to be based around maps and map keys. So next episode, we're going to continue our prep into Lost Mines. We'll kind of dig into some non-player character listings. My technique for that, where do I pull the information from? I go through, I'll show. I'm not going to talk about it. I don't want to give you it away. I want you to come back for next episode. But hey, DMGeezerjim signing off here. Hey, I appreciate your time. Whether been here for a few minutes, for the whole time, like, follow, subscribe, share with any of your friends. Jump in the comments, man. Please, please, please. Let me put an emphasis on that, and I'll probably say that at the start of the next video. If you have questions, if you think that if there's something that you have a specific, hey, DMGeezerjim, your stuff's good. I know all of this. Can you help me with that? Drop it in there, man. I'm more than happy to make a video to address that, because if one person has that question, odds are a lot of people have that question. This is a group think. This is a collaborative environment. We can all share with each other, and we can learn from each other's questions. If you have a comment, if you need me to go faster, slower, whatever, let me know, because I'm here to provide information for you guys, the audience, and part of that is the interaction between us. I'd love to hear back from you in the comments. I'd love to hear any questions or anything else. If you want to catch me live, check my stuff here on YouTube. You can find me over on Twitch Monday through Friday, chatting D&D during the daytime, running campaigns at night, and all in all. But hey, thanks for joining me. The Dungeon Masters information series will be continuing as we go into our heavy lifting, our preparation stuff. And I hope you join me for it. Be safe.